Hi, Arcfieldweather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Monday morning, September the 23rd. We now have a tropical system, a strong tropical wave over the northwestern part of the Caribbean Sea. We talked about this possibility at length last week. The overall pattern in the atmosphere is changing to a much more favorable weather pattern over places like the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, with enhanced upward motion. That is the reason why this system will continue to develop and intensify over the next day or two. Again, likely reaching tropical storm status within 24 to 48 hours or so. Then it pushes to the north into the Gulf of Mexico, still very warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, and probably continues on a northward track, perhaps making landfall sometime Thursday morning over Florida's Panhandle region, really anywhere from the Big Bend region of Florida to the western Panhandle, perhaps as a Category 2 hurricane, but certainly a Cat 1 or even a Cat 3 still on the table, still a few days away. But again, likely heading to Florida's Panhandle region by early Thursday as a hurricane. Certainly all residents from New Orleans all the way east to Tampa should continue to monitor this situation closely. Here's the latest look from the GOES East satellite system. We're using what we call the GeoColor channel here, and it shows a couple of areas of showers and thunderstorms. One right here centered over this part of the western Caribbean Sea, and then just off to its north and east, kind of a second area of showers and thunderstorms. This will consolidate into one strong tropical wave over the next 24 to 48 hours or so. Again, very likely becoming a named tropical storm within that time period. And then it starts to make that move to the northwest and then ultimately to the north, moving over the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico by the middle of the week. Here's the official positioning by NOAA's National Hurricane Center. First of all, a second tropical system here out over the far eastern Atlantic, and this current system is kind of centered over the northwestern part of the Caribbean Sea. Will probably make a move over the next couple of days between the Yucatan Peninsula region of Mexico to the west and western Cuba to the east, and then out over the eastern half of the Gulf of Mexico, moving in a northward direction by midweek. And again, likely landfall sometime on Thursday right in this area. But again, it's still 3 days away. Certainly all residents from New Orleans down to Tampa should continue to monitor this situation closely. My best guess right now is, again, landfall. Perhaps it's a Cat 2 hurricane sometime Thursday morning right in this area. But again, continue to monitor the situation closely. Now, we've talked about a big change in the overall weather pattern over the Atlantic basin that is yielding much more enhanced upward motion right in this part of the Atlantic basin. This is kind of a red flag, and this is the current situation over the Caribbean Sea is not going to be the end of the hurricane season by any means. I think we'll have pretty active next 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks going well into the month of October with that change in the overall weather pattern. Well, let's revisit a couple of important forecast maps that I posted at arcfieldweather.com late last week. This is for the past week, the week that just ended, and what we're looking at here is the upper level part of the atmosphere, the 200 millibar, way up there at the upper levels of the atmosphere. And we're looking at convergence and divergence patterns here across the globe for last week. Notice these browns right here. That's kind of a weak convergence in the upper part of the atmosphere. And this has really been the case for the last 2 or 3 weeks over the Gulf of Mexico, over the Caribbean Sea, kind of downward motion in the atmosphere, more or less inhibiting tropical storm activity in this part of the Atlantic basin. We did indeed have a couple of tropical systems to deal with, but this is still kind of a lid on the overall activity, and it is changing in a big time way. For this week, this is the same area that was circled above for this coming week, and this is a classic case of divergence in the upper part of the atmosphere, and atmosphere always tries to balance things out. So with divergence aloft, you'll have convergence, or a coming together of the air in the lower part of the atmosphere, and that produces upward motion. And indeed, we have upward motion, enhanced upward motion, and bingo, you have a strong tropical system now in the Caribbean Sea, right in this area right here, with that difluence or divergence aloft and convergence at the lower levels. And this pattern is not only going to exist this week, but I think for the next 3, maybe even 4 weeks, well into the month of October. In other words, look for an active weather pattern in the tropical Atlantic basin over the next few weeks, well into the month of October. Well, let's take a look at a couple of forecast models here. First, we'll look at NOAA's GFS model run from 0Z last night. Then we'll take a look at the European model. What we're looking at here, 500 millibar height anomalies here. And we notice right off the bat a big area of reds and oranges. This is higher heights than normal, higher pressures than normal over Greenland, over northern Canada. Kind of a blocking pattern in the upper part of the atmosphere. And this is a very anomalous area for these higher heights than normal here, again, over Greenland, Canada. It plays a big-time role in the ultimate movement of what will soon be a tropical storm and then likely a hurricane. Let's move forward here and watch what happens. First of all, here's the reflection at 500 millibars as of later on tonight of this tropical system. Again, the GFS model has been pretty consistent in pushing this system right between the Yucatan to the west and Cuba to the east. And that's an important track because it stays over the warm waters and it does not allow it to be weakened by these land masses here off to the west or off to the east. So this kind of a track certainly will help to maintain the strength and help it to intensify as it heads out over the Gulf of Mexico. Now notice this ridging kind of edging south and east across the southeastern part of Canada. This is the Wednesday morning, the midweek forecast map. Notice also another upper level low, and watch what happens with this whole scenario here. We get these two systems that end up kind of rotating around each other, kind of a dumbbelling effect here, what meteorologists often call the Fujiwara effect, where two lows will not coalesce necessarily. They may kind of repel each other and rotate around. And watch what happens here. Indeed, these just kind of rotate around. Now, let's backtrack again a couple of days here back to Thursday. This is the possible landfall time, sometime Thursday morning, potentially somewhere in the Big Bend region, the western panhandle of Florida, maybe as a Cat 2. We'll have to watch for that. Certain Cat 3 major hurricane is on the table here. And it starts to interact with this upper level low to its north and west and rotates around. And because of all this strong ridging to the north, it doesn't move much farther north than the Tennessee Valley. What I'm talking about are the remnants of the hurricane later in the week. They will not end up moving too far to the north. Right here, eventually it kind of coalesces into one large upper level low. But again, with this ridging, strong ridging over the eastern and southern part of Canada, this system, the remnants of the hurricane, will not relieve the drought situation in the Mid-Atlantic region, for example. It looks like it'll kind of stall out over the Tennessee Valley, rotate around with that other upper level low, and then ultimately just sit there for another couple of days here. We'll go out later in the week and weekend, and here we are still situated over the Tennessee Valley by the time we get to Sunday morning. So kind of an interesting upper level pattern with that Fujiwara effect, or that rotating around with the lows, one a tropical wave and another upper level low down across the southern U.S. and the very strong upper level ridging over Canada. Now let's shift to the surface forecast maps from last night's 0Z run of the GFS, and we'll go forward rather quickly here. And again, looking all the way down at the bottom here, we have a consistent forecast, by the way, from the GFS. This kind of existed last week as well, in that it pushes this tropical system right between Mexico to the west and Cuba to the east. And that'll help to maintain its strength or even help it to intensify as it spills out over into the Gulf of Mexico. Here we are on Wednesday, and it does intensify as it moves out over the very warm waters of the southern and eastern Gulf of Mexico. And again, likely making a landfall sometime in this time frame here, early to midday on Thursday, as Cat 2 storm, maybe even a Cat 3 major hurricane. Again, be on the lookout all the way from Tampa to Apalachicola and even all the way west to New Orleans over the next couple of days. But it's looking like the Gulf coastal region of Florida for a possible landfall on Thursday as a hurricane. Then it pushes to the north, right through Georgia on this particular model run, and grinds to a halt. And over the Tennessee, maybe the southern part of the Ohio Valley. Again, remember, there was this tremendous high pressure sitting right in this area right here, and it just helps it to stall out over the Ohio Valley or the Tennessee Valley. And here's kind of that secondary area right here. So we have two upper level lows here that tend to rotate around each other here for a couple of days. And again, with this high to the north, the remnants of that hurricane will not make its way up into mid-Atlantic or northeast U.S., at least not anytime in the near term here. Then we move forward here, and here it is by the time we get to the latter part of the upcoming weekend, still situated right over the Tennessee Valley region as of Sunday morning. Again, all thanks to that very, very strong blocking high over Canada. Now, let's wrap up with the 0Z run of the European model. Not quite as strong for that tropical system as the GFS model, but let's walk through it here. It does tend to follow this similar path here, in that right here by the time we get to the latter part of Tuesday and then into the midweek here, we have the system basically squeezing through the Yucatan to the south and west, western Cuba to the east here, and then it spills out over into the Gulf of Mexico, the southern Gulf of Mexico. And by the time we get to the latter part of the evening on Wednesday and into Thursday morning, it starts approaching the Panhandle region of Florida. This is again using the European model run from 0Z, and here we go by the time we get to the midday or afternoon hours on Thursday, possible landfall somewhere in that Florida Panhandle region here, according to this particular model run, the 0Z European model. Now, similar to the GFS, it kind of cuts right through Georgia and then stalls out over the Tennessee Valley, and a reflection of that second upper level low right here. So you have one upper level low here, and then the remnants of the tropical system here, and they'll tend to rotate around each other over the midweek and the latter part of the week. And let's move forward a couple more days here. Again, very little chance for the remnants to move all the way into mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. because of that tremendous blocking high over Canada. Here we go into the weekend, and pretty much still situated over the Tennessee Valley, the middle Mississippi Valley by the time we get to Sunday morning, and it does tend to, of course, weaken over land here. But a kind of very interesting weather pattern with a tremendous blocking high to the north, and the tropical system now intensifying over the northwestern Caribbean Sea, likely becomes a named tropical storm over the next day or two, and then spills out over the Gulf of Mexico, increasing in its intensity to hurricane status, potential landfall somewhere around Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon time frame, somewhere around the Florida Panhandle region, Big Bend region. Certainly continue to monitor if you're a resident all the way from the New Orleans area to Tampa over the next couple of days, because we're still talking about 3 days away here. But the tropical scene is active now, and it looks like it'll stay active in the Atlantic Basin for at least the next few weeks. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.